It is 85 degrees outside right now, and inside this room, I am actually freezing. No air conditioner, no expensive unit, no installation, just a standing fan, 2 frozen bottles, and a handful of zip ties. In about 10 minutes, you can turn an ordinary fan into a whole room cooler. This is a serious upgrade on the usual do-it-yourself air conditioner. Most of those builds only cool one small spot right in front of you. This one cools the entire room because it uses the oscillation of the fan. I watched the thermometer in here drop from 85 degrees down to 68. That happened in a matter of minutes, and it kept going. Total cooling time from one freeze is around 5 to 8 hours, and there is a hack inside this hack that stretches it even further. It costs almost nothing, and you probably own everything already. Let me show you exactly how to build it, step by step. Before we start, go ahead and subscribe. On this channel, we share practical home tricks that most people never learn. And drop a comment telling me the hottest room in your house, the bedroom, the kitchen, the garage, or that upstairs room that never cools down. I read everyone, and I turn them into future builds. Here is everything you need for this build. 1 standing pedestal fan, and it really should be an oscillating one. 2 clear plastic drink bottles, the 1-liter size. A pack of zip ties, sometimes called cable ties. 1 old towel that you do not mind getting damp. And a 1/4 cup of ordinary table salt for the upgrade later on. That is the whole list, and none of it is expensive. Let me say a quick word about choosing your fan. A tall standing pedestal fan works best for this. It needs a rear grill made of wire, with gaps you can thread a zip tie through. Almost every standard standing fan is built exactly like that. Oscillation is the part that turns this from a gadget into a real room cooler. A fan that only points one way will cool one chair and nothing else. A fan that sweeps will push cooled air across the whole room. Skip the small desk fans for this one. They do not have the frame or the power to carry the weight of the bottles. 2 full 1-liter bottles weigh over 4 pounds together. A proper pedestal fan with a weighted base handles that without any trouble. Now let us talk about the bottles, because this part matters more than people think. 1-liter bottles are the sweet spot for a standard-sized fan head. They hold enough ice to matter, and they still fit neatly on the rear grill. Use the ribbed or grooved kind if you have them, because they hold their shape. Never use glass bottles for this. Glass can crack as the water freezes and expands. Fill each bottle with water, but leave a gap at the top. Water expands by roughly 9% when it turns to ice. Leave about 2 inches of air, or the bottle will bulge and split. Screw the caps on, stand them upright in the freezer, and leave them overnight. Frozen solid is what you want, not slushy. A slushy bottle will melt in about half the time. If you can spare the freezer space, make 4 bottles instead of 2. Then you always have a frozen pair ready while the first pair thaws. All right, let us build it. Step 1. Unplug the fan before you touch anything. You are going to be working around the blades, so do not skip that. Step 2. Take the front grill off the fan head. On most fans there are clips around the rim, or a few small screws. Work your way around the edge and lift the front grill away. Now the blades are exposed, so keep your fingers clear of them. You are only taking the front off so you can check clearance later. The rear grill, the one at the back, stays exactly where it is. That rear grill is what everything is going to be tied to. Step 3. Turn the fan around so the back is facing you. This is the intake side, the side the fan pulls air in through. And that is the whole secret of this build. Every bit of air the fan blows out of the front is drawn in through the back first. So if you chill the air at the back, the air leaving the front comes out cold. The bottles go on the back. They never go on the front. Bottles on the front just block the airflow and do almost nothing. Step 4. Hold the first ice bottle up against the back of the fan. And here is the important part. Hold it upside down. The cap and the narrow neck point down at the floor. The wide, flat base of the bottle points up at the ceiling. There is a real reason for mounting them that way round. That narrow, grooved neck just above the cap gives the zip tie something to grip. The zip tie sits in that groove, and the bottle simply cannot slide out. If you mount the bottles the other way up, there is nothing to hold them. The smooth, tapered shoulder just lets the tie slip and the bottle drops. So upside down every time. Put one bottle to the left of the round motor hub in the middle, and put the other bottle to the right of it. Keep them roughly level with each other so the fan stays balanced. Sit them in the middle band of the grill, not up at the very top, mounted too high, and the fan gets top heavy and wants to tip. Mounted in the middle, and the weight sits right over the pole. I actually dropped mine about 2 inches lower than where I first placed them, a little more central, and it ran better and sat steadier. Step 5. Now we tie them on. Take a zip tie and feed it through a gap in the rear grill. Bring it back out through the next gap along. Now wrap it around the narrow neck of the bottle, just above the cap. Thread the tip into the little square head and pull it tight. You want it snug, so the bottle does not shift when the fan runs. I am using white zip ties here, just so you can see them clearly. Black ones work exactly the same and blend in better. Sometimes a single zip tie is not quite long enough to reach. If that happens, just link 2 of them together. Feed the tip of one into the head of the other, and you have one long tie. It works perfectly, and it is much easier than hunting for bigger ties. Put a second tie a little further up the body of the bottle. One tie at the neck, and one across the body holds it rock solid. Now do exactly the same on the other side. Thread through, wrap the neck, pull it tight. An extra pair of hands helps here, but you can absolutely do it alone. And that is genuinely all there is to putting it together. Snip off the long tails of the zip ties so nothing flaps around. Now, before you close it up, do this one check. Make sure nothing is touching the blade on the inside. The bottles sit on the outside of the rear grill, so they should be clear. But a zip tie tail can poke through and catch, so check for that. Spin the blade around slowly by hand and listen for any rub. If it turns freely and quietly, you are good. Now put the front grill back on. Line it up, clip it around the rim, and make sure it is properly seated. Never run this fan with the front grill left off. That grill is the only thing between a spinning blade and your fingers. And there it is. The build is finished. Now here is something I really should have mentioned earlier. As those bottles start to melt, they are going to drip. Warm room air hits the cold plastic and condensation forms on the outside. That water runs down the bottle and drips off the cap at the bottom. And this is the second reason we mounted the bottles upside down. All the water gathers at the cap and falls straight down to the floor. It never runs sideways into the motor housing. So take an old towel and lay it on the floor under the back of the fan. Spread it wide enough to catch the drips as the fan oscillates. A shallow tray works well too, if you would rather not use a towel. On a humid day, you will get a surprising amount of water down there. Do not let that water pool around the base or the power cord. Water and electricity are the one part of this build to take seriously. All right, plug it back in and let us see what it actually does. I have had this running for just a few minutes now. The room started at 85 degrees. It is already down to 75, and it is still dropping. A couple of minutes later, 72. That is about 5 minutes of running time. Stand in front of it, and you can genuinely feel the difference. The air coming off the front is noticeably colder than the room, and because it oscillates, that cold air is going everywhere. Not one small cone in front of the fan, the whole room. A little while later, we are down to 68 degrees, from 85 outside to 68 in here. With a fan, 2 bottles, and some zip ties. If this is working for you so far, take 1 second to subscribe. We build simple practical fixes like this every single week. So the obvious question, how long does it actually last? In a room about 12 feet by 15 feet, here is what I get. Melt time for the 2 bottles is about 3 to 5 hours. That is the time it takes for solid ice to become water. But it does not stop cooling the moment the ice is gone. Fresh meltwater is still sitting at around 32 degrees. That water carries on cooling the air as it slowly warms up. You get roughly another 2 hours out of it before it reaches room temperature. So the total useful cooling cycle is about 5 to 8 hours. That is an entire evening or a full night of sleep, which is honestly all most people need it for. Swap in the frozen pear from the freezer, and you go straight into a second cycle. Now here is the really good part, a hack inside the hack. If you want those bottles to last around 50% longer, add salt. When you fill the bottles with water, add about a 1/4 cup of table salt. Ordinary table salt Nothing special, straight from the kitchen. Put the cap on and shake it up properly until the salt dissolves. Then freeze it exactly as you would normally. Here is why this works. Salt lowers the temperature at which water freezes. So instead of freezing at 32 degrees, it freezes well below that, which means the ice inside is colder to begin with. And colder ice simply takes longer to warm all the way up. You get a longer run and a colder airflow out of the same bottle. Now do not get carried away with the salt. A quarter cup per bottle is the right amount. Push it up toward a third of a cup and you run into a problem. Your home freezer may not get cold enough to freeze it at all. You open the freezer in the morning and find slush instead of ice, and slush melts far too quickly to be any use. So stick with a quarter cup and it will freeze solid and last. One more thing about the salt version. It runs colder, so it also pulls more condensation out of the air, which means more dripping, so make sure that towel is down, and keep these bottles clearly marked as salt water. Nobody wants to grab one of these for a drink by mistake. Let me come back to the oscillation for a moment. With every other homemade cooler I have built, you get one small cold spot. You have to sit directly in front of it, or you feel nothing at all. Step 2 feet to the side, and it is like the thing is not even on. This build is different because the fan sweeps the cold air across the room. It mixes the cooled air with the warm air instead of just aiming a jet at you. That is what actually brings the whole room temperature down. So leave the oscillation switched on, even though the instinct is to aim it at yourself. Point the fan across the widest part of the room for the best mixing, and do not push it right up against a wall. It needs clear space behind it to pull air in through those bottles. Give it at least a foot or two of open air at the back. Now let me be straight with you about what this is and what it is not. This is not a real air conditioner, and I do not want to oversell it. A real air conditioner takes heat out of your room and dumps it outside. That is why it can run all day and keep the room cold indefinitely. What this build does is move heat out of your air and into the ice. The heat does not leave the room. It gets stored in the melting ice, which is exactly why it stops working once the ice is gone. So think of it as a cooler for one room for one evening, not a replacement for central air across a whole house. Within those limits, it works genuinely well. There is a second thing happening here that helps as well. All that condensation on the bottles is moisture pulled out of your air. Drier air feels cooler on your skin, even at the same temperature. So the fan is very gently dehumidifying the room at the same time. It is a small effect, but on a sticky day you really do notice it. And here is the part that makes this genuinely worth doing. A standing fan draws somewhere around 50 to 100 watts. A window air conditioner pulls 500 to 1500 watts. You are running this for pennies an evening, and the ice costs you nothing but a corner of your freezer. A few safety points before we finish, because they matter. Always unplug the fan before you attach or swap the bottles. Keep the power cord well away from the wet area under the fan. Never let water run down the pole toward the motor or the switches. Wipe the fan head down with a dry cloth after every session. Check your zip ties each time before you switch it on. A tie that has loosened can let a heavy bottle swing, and that is worth avoiding. Rinse and dry the bottles out between uses. Standing water in a warm bottle will eventually grow mold. Leave the caps off when they are drying so the insides air out properly. And replace the bottles once they get cloudy or start losing their shape. They are cheap, and a bottle that splits inside your fan is a mess you do not want. Let me cover a few things that might go wrong. If the air does not feel cold, check the bottles are really on the back. On the front they block the airflow and chill nothing. If the fan wobbles, your bottles are mounted too high. Move them down toward the middle of the grill and it will settle. If you hear a rattle, something is touching the blade. Unplug it and check for a zip tie tail poking through the rear grill. If it drips more than you expected, that is just a humid day. Put down a bigger towel or a shallow tray and carry on. And if the bottles thaw too fast, you probably did not freeze them long enough. Give them a full overnight freeze and add that quarter cup of salt. So let me pull all of this together. 1 oscillating standing fan, 2 1-liter bottles frozen solid, a quarter cup of salt in each, A few zip ties, one old towel, bottles upside down on the back of the fan, caps pointing at the floor, zip ties through the grill and tight around the neck. Front grill back on, towel underneath, oscillation switched on. That is a whole room cooled for 5 to 8 hours, for pennies of electricity, and about 10 minutes of your time. I honestly cannot wait for a properly hot day to run this again. I wanted to show you this 2 days ago, when it hit 95 degrees outside, but it rained today, so it cooled off on me. Even so, 68 degrees in here speaks for itself. So here is my challenge to you. Freeze 2 bottles tonight and build this tomorrow. It will take you about 10 minutes, and you already own most of it. Then come back and tell me in the comments how far your room temperature dropped. Tell me your starting temperature and where you ended up. And please share this one with a friend who is struggling in the heat, because when it gets really hot and you just need one room cool, this works. Before you go, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We share simple, practical builds like this every week. And drop a comment telling me what you want me to build next.